Welcome to my class. My name is Mirbek Akhalbek Khairatbegula, and today we will talk about communication. Today we will talk about 4 communication styles: passive, aggressive, and assertive one. Whether communicating through speech or some other method, your communication style has a lot to do with how much of what you say will truly be understood and accepted. It is very important to understand your own communication style so you can recognize both its strengths and weaknesses. And also, it is helpful to understand the communication styles of others. By understanding the style of your communication, you'll have the opportunity to be a much more effective communicator. 4 major communication styles. Each style serves a different purpose, and you'll be able to identify those and understand which is the most effective. So, what defines communication in today's world? What are the different types of communication and what are their characterizations? What do I need to know about passive communication, aggressive communication, passive-aggressive communication, and assertive communication? And how do we know which communication style is the most effective? Before getting down to the main part of our lecture, I would like to talk about communication, to give a definition. So communication is more than just the act of talking. For true communication to happen, ideas have to be shared and understood among people. While talking is certainly one of the most obvious methods we use to relate thoughts and ideas to one another, it is not the only form of communication we use regularly. Have you ever had an entire conversation without even speaking a word? A glance here, a head nod there, maybe a couple of gestures. Without even opening your mouth, you can communicate entire thoughts to other people. To the question, can we guess your communication style? There are a lot of answers. There are a number of ways to define communication styles. It seems that every self-help or public speaking book has yet another way to categorize the ways people prefer to communicate. The labels placed on the various communication styles are much less important than taking the time to simply consider what your own style might be. The more you know about the various styles of communication, the more effective you can be, not just in making your own points, but also in understanding what others are trying to communicate to you. One common method for determining communication styles is to break them down into the following categories, like passive, passive-aggressive, and assertive one. The first style of communication in our lecture plan is the passive style. Those who use a passive style of communication often keep their own feelings hidden from others. The goal with this type of communication is to avoid conflict, rather than risk causing some sort of upset. The passive communicator will avoid expressing his or her own opinions and will accept those of others instead. Here is an example of this communication style. If the passive communicator does choose to express an opinion, it will usually be done very quietly, and he or she is unlikely to defend it very strongly. In addition to a quiet tone of voice, passive communication can be recognized by the way in which the individual avoids eye contact. Because the passive communicator is so concerned about avoiding conflict, he or she is constantly holding back personal opinions in favor of those of others. In most of the case of passive communication style, the person who keeps such kind of style is a person who doesn't want to rock the boat. The passive communicator will often say things like, "I don't know, you decide, it doesn't matter to me, whatever you think." This inability to stand up for oneself has some major disadvantages. Unfortunately, someone who always engages in passive communication may eventually blow up from the pressure of always deferring to other people's ideas and opinions. The passive communicator tends to get very little accomplished. He or she doesn't offer ideas on how to do things better or more efficiently. For example, in an effort not to be singled out, he or she is unlikely to do an exceptional job in the workplace. The next style of communication which we are going to discuss is called aggressive. Aggressive communication has a lot to do with trying to protect one's own ideas and opinions. And mostly, the communicator is hostile and unfriendly. In this, easily observe how the aggressive communication looks like. The aggressive communicator is so concerned with having his or her ideas accepted that they often do so at the expense of others. This person tends to look at every situation as if it is a battle and he or she wants to win the battle. This type of communication generally includes the use of a loud voice. In fact, aggressive communicators may often appear to be quite angry. This is because they know that others are less likely to question them out of fear of being attacked. Eye contact is often used in a way that makes it intimidating. The words used may also be quite intimidating, and an aggressive communicator can go so far as to verbally abuse others. The aggressive communicator will often say things like, "We do it my way," or "We don't do it at all." "Your idea is stupid." "Feelings don't matter." "I know what is best." The aggressive communicator will use manipulation to get his or her way. This might include attempting to make others feel guilty or trying to control their actions. These people will often go so far as to use covert tactics to be sure that things are done their way. While this style of communication work on the surface, they do little to foster any real relationships. While the aggressive communicator may be getting a point across, he or she is likely not hearing and accepting the ideas of others. This leads to a lack of respect and trust from friends, family, co-workers, and customers. And now I would like to show you a video in which you will observe some aggressive communication style. So enjoy the film.
Dr. Taylor.
Yeah, what's up,
Alright, you know your patient in room 3 with a end-stage COPD and pulmonary fibrosis?
3. Yeah, Pfeiffer.
Yeah, well, you know, she's maxed out on all her steroids. She's getting nebulizer treatments every hour. O2 stats are dropping. They dropped from 88 to 85, and her respirations are now at a 30. Distress because they think that this isn't going to last too much longer, and they want a hospice consult. So can you give her one?
I'm looking at her ABGs here. I mean, they're not getting better, but they're really not all that much worse. I don't think it's time for a hospice consult yet.
Have you even been in there? If you had been in there to see her, you would see that she needs a hospice consult.
So the next style of communication is passive-aggressive communication. While passive communication and aggressive communication are very different from one another, they can actually be combined to create a third communication style. Passive-aggressive communicators tend to avoid obvious conflict, but there is still need to manipulate the situation. In many cases, there is some sort of payback given in return for having their opinions overlooked. The individual appears to go along with decisions but does so in order to get revenge later. Some of the common tactics of the passive-aggressive communicator are to agree with others to their faces and then belittle them behind their backs. Sarcasm is one of the biggest tools for this type of interaction. Passive-aggressive communicators may enjoy watching others fail because things were not done their way in the first place. Backhanded compliments are another tactic employed. The passive-aggressive communicator will often say things like, "That's fine with me, but don't be surprised if someone else gets mad. You did a great job. No one will probably notice that mistake. Sure, we can do things your way." Then mutters to self that your way is stupid. Further, I would like to show you a video from YouTube channel which shows you how people communicate in a passive-aggressive style of communication.
People are being passive-aggressive when they use indirect communications that have to be analyzed to figure out the meaning. Most of us are passive-aggressive at times, especially if we are feeling angry or frustrated and are unable to express our thoughts clearly. But some people use passive-aggressive tactics deliberately in order to confuse, control, and even punish others. Here are 5 signs of passive-aggressive communications. Are any of these tactics familiar? Have they ever been used on you? 1. The silent treatment. Has anyone ever stopped speaking to you or responding to your text messages? Maybe you had an argument recently and this person got upset. Now they're using the silent treatment to let you know that there is still a problem. 2. Subtle insults. You can't be sure when a subtle insult has happened. That's why it's called subtle. For example, you give your report to the boss who says, "Hey, this is great. This is the biggest surprise of my week." Why is the boss so surprised? Does that mean that your work isn't usually great? This is how subtle insults can work. They confuse people and undermine their confidence, especially when there is a power imbalance. 3. Procrastinating on purpose. You have probably asked someone to do a favor. They agree, and then they don't do it. You ask them again, and the answer might be, "In a minute." But a minute later, nothing has happened. This type of procrastination can be a power move by someone showing you that they are in control of the schedule and that you have no control over them. 4. Sabotage. Sabotage comes from a French word that means to bungle. When people engage in sabotage, they deliberately mess things up for someone else. A person using this passive-aggressive tactic might hit and erase a presentation or stumble and drop the dessert you made. 5. Keeping score. Friends help friends because that's what friends do, right? Well, not a scorekeeper. These are people who keep track of all the favors they do for you. Remember, you owe me for this. And then they pay you back if you can't attend their party by missing your next party on purpose. If you use any of these passive-aggressive tactics, try to be more clear and direct in your communication. Can you think of anybody who displays these 5 signs of passive-aggressive communication? Let us know in the comments down below.
Passive-aggressive communication has a lot to do with sabotage. The individual may feel powerless and therefore finds ways to subtly manipulate the situation. Passive-aggressive communicators don't feel like they can directly confront the cause of their frustration, so they do their best to get back at. This can extend to gossiping and finding ways to disrupt others. The next communication style which we are going to discuss is assertive communication. The most effective communication style. This includes really sharing opinions as well as advocating for one's own rights. Unlike the aggressive communicator, assertive communicator will not trample on the rights and opinions of others. Assertive communicators are able to balance a respect for themselves with a respect for others. So this is a structure of assertive communication. Many of the tactics employed by assertive communicators include things like using a calm, clear tone of voice, actually interacting with others, not interrupting, avoiding manipulation, either manipulating others or being manipulated, using good eye contact, and remaining in control of one's self. This leads to communication that is a two-way street, and the assertive communicator is likely to garner respect from those around him or her. Assertive communication also allows for growth, as everyone involved is allowed to hear different opinions and share their own thoughts and ideas. The assertive communicator will often say things like, "I hear what you are saying. I would appreciate if you would. How can we work with this?" Assertive communication is also the best choice because it avoids a lot of the emotional outbursts that are prevalent with the other types of communication. It is easy to solve problems when they do arise. It can be difficult to stay on track. However, especially when dealing with different types of communicators, it is important to avoid getting defensive and to try to remain as objective as possible. It is possible that someone else's idea really is better than yours. On the other hand, it is possible that you have the best idea in the room, and the assertive communicator will advocate for it. If communication is just getting shut down, the assertive communicator may have to stop the conversation and pick it up another time when tempers aren't flaring. It is best to validate the other people's experience and feelings by saying things like, "I can see why you feel that way." This means that the assertive communicator must also be willing to hear what others have to say, and it is possible that others will have good points. This type of communication is effective because both parties are willing to look at themselves and change or compromise when the situation calls for it. So now, dear students, we have come to the end of our lecture, to the end of the textual material of our lecture. So further we will watch the video that gives us different values, expressions of the communication styles. So here in front of you we have given the picture of styles of communication, and I would like you to remember or to revise the materials that you have learned from my lecture, from my today's lecture, because furthermore you have a survey. Try to keep in your mind the names of the styles of communication. So dear students, furthermore, you will watch the video which compares the assertive and aggressive styles of communication, and try to make a note of the information that you will watch, because they are very necessary in your survey.
Some situations call for you to be assertive, and some people are better at being assertive than others. Have you ever hesitated out of fear that your assertiveness will come across as aggressive? Let's take a look at how you can be assertive without being perceived as aggressive. Well, first, you have to understand the difference between the two terms. Assertiveness is the quality of being self-assured and confident. Aggressiveness is characterized by hostility, attacks, or invasions. But a synonym for both of these words is forceful. And that's really the tipping point between being assertive and being aggressive. It's all about your body language. Now let's start with posture. Assertive posture is when you're standing up straight, your shoulders are relaxed, and your weight is spread evenly on both legs. You want your gestures to be smooth, meaning you want to be viewed as though you're calm and in control. Keep your body balanced. Now that's upright and relaxed. Keep your feet firm on the ground. Keep your body language open. And don't show threats, and make sure there are no barriers across your body. Now, being open also includes smiling, accepting, and listening. Aggressive posture is when you have hunched shoulders, your head is cocked to one side, or if you're standing as though you're leaning forward with one foot slightly in front of the other. Your gestures will be angry and fast, and you'll have closed posture, meaning your legs or arms are crossed in front of you. Now, what about distance or where you stand? A good rule of thumb when being assertive is to allow yourself and the person you're speaking to enough room to feel at ease, where you can move when necessary. You want to be close enough to the other person so you can be heard clearly without having to raise your voice or shout. An aggressive distance would be when you don't make yourself or the other person feel comfortable, meaning you're right in their face or you're standing over them. You're not giving them enough room to move freely. Remember, aggressive means you're ready to attack or invade, so this gives you a position of too much power. Eye contact can be viewed as assertive or aggressive. With eye contact, you really need to take the rest of the body language into account to help you determine if they're being assertive or aggressive. When you're assertive, you look directly at the other person you're talking to. You aren't looking up or down, and you maintain eye contact during the communication. So what's it look like if you're aggressive? Well, it can be more of a glare instead of just eye contact. You might side-eye someone, or your eyes might narrow and squint. Even what you do with your mouth can affect how you're being received. When you're assertive, you have a relaxed jaw and chin. And by contrast, when you're aggressive, your jaw is clenched and your lips are tight and pursed. Now, let's talk about voice. Your voice, your tone, your pitch, and your volume should match that of your body language. Assertive voice is when you speak slowly, audibly, and calmly. You're not monotone, your pitch changes when necessary, but your voice isn't shaky. Aggressive voice is when you use a loud, angry voice. Your pitch is going up and down, as are your emotions. Let's take a look at a few examples and see if you can tell the difference. Hey, we need to talk about your numbers. Hey, we need to talk about your numbers. That's not my responsibility. That is not my responsibility. But assertive and aggressive behavior doesn't limit itself to face-to-face interactions. We communicate regularly using electronic devices where we just read the information. So the best way to stay assertive in your communication is to write using the active voice. Active voice puts the subject of the sentence first, and the subject performs the action. It's the best way to communicate clearly and concisely. And compared to the passive voice, it makes your communication come across stronger and more direct. Aggressive written communication would also be written in the active voice, but it's the word choice and the way it's formatted that shows the aggression. Instead of yelling at you face to face, they send a text in all caps or bold, and they use a lot of exclamation points. They don't adhere to normal protocols in writing. There will be no greeting, no please, no thank you. So let's take a look at the two previous examples and how they've played out in the written word. Being assertive allows you to communicate honestly and directly in order to achieve your needs and goals. Assertiveness allows you to recognize another's need, but ultimately do what's best for you. It also allows you to stand up for yourself in a respectful and considerate way. In the end, it leaves you feeling confident about your choices, helps you maintain honest relationships with others, and it facilitates collaboration.
So the next video material that we are going to learn or to watch, is about how to identify passive-aggressive traits and behaviors. So enjoy your video.
People who are passive-aggressive often suppress their anger and frustration and inculcate a pessimistic attitude towards life. They prefer to take a non-verbal way of expressing their annoyance and displeasure. Living and interacting with a passive-aggressive person can be frustrating and exhausting. Such people communicate their feelings in a roundabout way and hide their anger and resentment through evasiveness and sarcasm. Passive-aggressive people are sensitive to criticism and rejection and respond to conflicts in interpersonal relationship by acting cold, sullen and withdrawing affection. They take revenge by giving the silent treatment. They do not like or are uncomfortable with confrontations and will mask their true feelings by being sarcastic and glib. You will have a feeling that you are walking on eggshells all the time. If you have to live or work with such a person, it can be quite draining and stressful. Traits of a passive-aggressive person. Passive-aggressive people seem to agree and comply with others' wishes, but they do not demonstrate any enthusiasm while doing them. They rarely hold themselves responsible for their actions. Most of the time, they find a way to blame others for things that go wrong in their life. People with passive-aggressive nature are found switching between hostile rebelliousness and contrition. They keep on making exaggerated and perpetual complaints. Dismissing a person in order to shut down the topic of conversation is one of the major signs of such behavior. Such people tend to procrastinate tasks assigned to them. They have a careless attitude towards deadlines. They follow their own time schedule and routines, without caring for others. Passive-aggressive people often feel that they are oppressed by others. They think of themselves as being misunderstood and underappreciated. Passive-aggressive partners aim to control their relationship by agreeing to cooperate in certain issues, but they will not follow through the agreement. People with such behavioral pattern are afraid of intimacy and are unable to open themselves up to their partner. They veil their insults with a smile so that a person is unable to understand if it was an insult or a joke. Such people are often sullen and argumentative. They will often make excuses for not completing any task with their forgetfulness. Causes for passive-aggressive behavior. According to Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, passive-aggressive behavior is not considered as a personality disorder. However, it makes life very difficult for people who have to live with them. There can be a number of causes behind the development of passive-aggressive traits in individuals. The most probable one is growing up in a family or social atmosphere where not much importance is given to an individual's needs and wants, where expressing personal desires is not accepted and is taken as being selfish. Sometimes children resent their parents' expectations and demands, but are too timid to openly defy their wishes. In such a situation, they express their anger and resentment by displaying passive-aggressive behavior. In such situations, Children can drive to protect the relationship with their family members and friends which they cannot afford to jeopardize. How to deal with a passive-aggressive person. If you find passive-aggressive traits in your partner, spouse, co-worker or children, there are a few things that you can do to deal with them. Try to nip such behavior in the bud. If a passive-aggressive person insults you with a smile or try to pass off an insult as a joke, just tell him that it is not okay to do so. Let the person know that he has crossed the line and you won't accept such type of behavior. This is very important, especially if you are living with a passive-aggressive spouse or partner. Veiled insults are a form of mental abuse, and if you don't let the other person know that such behavior is unacceptable, it will never stop. While discussing an issue or conflict with such a person, make sure that you explain the ground rules. This means that none of you are going to use abusive language, break up the past or go off track from your current discussion. One of the biggest mistakes that most people make while dealing with such people is that they never confront them. It is very important to confront their behavior and express how you feel. If such a person intentionally forgets tasks assigned to him, then don't do it yourself. Make sure that the person knows that he cannot escape doing it by pretending forgetfulness. A passive-aggressive person will always try to deny that she was being hostile and will say that you misunderstood him/her. This type of behavior often stems from deep-rooted insecurities and fear, so you need to have patience while dealing with such people.
Now, dear students, here is our survey, and our survey is to identify your communication style. So you will be asked 13 questions. So try to give the honest answers to each question. So the first question, we can do it in that way. Just write down your own answers and send it to me by your WhatsApp chat, or the second way, I will send you the link to this questionnaire and you will pass it and you will show me your own answers. So I underlined or marked the link especially, so you could copy it out or write down the link address on the search button and find out the survey. So I decided to do this survey on my own way. So let's find out what kind of communicator am I. So choose the best statement for you. I hear too many people communicate like they are whippy daytime talk show host. I hear too many people communicate like they lack emotional intelligence. Okay, I choose the first one. Choose the best statement for you. Emotions are a critical component of how one should make decisions. Emotions are imprecise and can easily cloud one's judgment. Okay, I think let's be more realistic and choose the second version of the answer. Okay, choose the best statement for you. When I make a decision, I trust my gut and intuition. When I make a decision, I trust logic and data. So mostly I trust logic and data, in fact. Choose the best statement for you. So question number 4. I'm much more likely to be convinced of something if the person doing the convincing really understands the bigger picture. I'm much more likely to be convinced of something if the person doing the convincing has a firm handle on specifics and details. So the second one, I think. Choose the best statement for you. Decision making should be a very structured and linear process. Decision making should be free of rules and constraints and allowed to proceed free form. So I think the first one. Structured and linear thinking improves creativity and originality. Structured and linear thinking hurts creativity and originality. I think the second one. When I give a formal order, I expect people to follow it. I prefer to offer guidance and advice rather than giving formal orders. Okay, formal order, the best way, in my opinion. Question number 8. Which of these statements best describes the communication style of your ideal boss? Okay, now let's find out my ideal boss. They like hard data, real numbers, and like people who are in command of the facts and data. They like the big picture, avoid getting bogged down in details, and cut right to the chase. They like process detailed timelines and well thought out plans. They like emotional language, connection, and hearing how people feel. Okay. So the first one. This is my decision. Okay, for research purpose, which function most closely describes your current job? Administration, finance, human resources, IT, technology, programming, marketing, PR, social, operation, production, sales, support services, other. So, okay, which one suits to me? I think social one. Which of these best describes my current position? Top-level executive, mid-level manager, front-line supervisor, individual contributor, others. Okay, individual contributor. For research purpose, how do you feel about your current job? So, I like it. For research purpose, please rate this statement. People consider me very ambitious. Not at all like me. So, somewhat like me, I think. For research purposes, which of these statements best describes the communication style of your current boss? They like hard data, real numbers, and like people who are in command of the facts and data. They like the big picture, avoid get bogged. Okay, I think this kind of answers we have met already. So my answer was the first one. Okay, my first name and my email address. Yes, I want my personal results. Okay, here's the result. According to this survey, I'm an analytical communicator. Okay, what does that mean? I like hard data, real numbers, and I tend to be suspicious of people who aren't in command of the facts and data. You tend to like very specific language and dislike vague language. For example, when someone tells you sales are positive, you are likely to think, what does positive mean? Give me a number. And analytical communicators tend to have little patience for lots of feeling and emotional words in communication. The plus of being an analytical communicator is that because you like communication to be fairly unemotional, you are often able to look at the issues logically and disappointingly, and others will often see you as having high levels of data and informational expertise. The potential downside is that you may strike certain people as cold or unfeeling. For example, when interacting with people like personal communicators, who tend to like warm and chatty personal relationships, it is possible for analytical communicators to get irritated and terse, and that can sometimes have political and relational consequences. Okay, thanks a lot, dear students. So now you know what kind of communicator am I, and I ask you to make your own results and to know about what kind of person or communicator you are. Thanks for taking a part in my lecture. Hope you were interested in. So, see you. Bye bye.